Hi, I'm Will from Tested.
I'm Norm from Tested.
Norm, today we're talking about this.
Finally, the new Kone.
Yeah, so this is the third generation of the Able Brewing Kone. What it is a metal filter for your Chemex.
So as opposed to using a paper filter,
Yeah.
you can buy one metal filter that's clean, but you can reuse over and over again.
So that's the obvious benefit, is that you literally can use this filter thousands and thousands of times. I've been using these for about 2 years now, and they work great. It's just acid etched holes in a metal filter. It's a very thin piece of metal. There have been some substantial changes with the third generation to the previous design.
Well, I see this black rim around the edge.
Yeah, so that's the first one, is the big plastic black rim. It's there so that when it's time to clean the filter, you can just knock it on your trash can edge, knock box, whatever, and dump your coffee out very easily.
All right.
He's also changed the hole pattern and the size of the holes. That affects the amount of water that goes through the grounds and how much blockage there is, and actually how easy it is to choke the filter, which is when you put too much coffee or too fine coffee, the holes get clogged and the water just stalls.
And this isn't just some arbitrary hole pattern or hole width.
No.
Keith from Able Brewing went through many, many prototypes.
Yeah, we talked to Keith earlier this year. I think he said he had 45 prototypes at that time on this third generation design. It's changed dramatically from the very early cones that we started testing like 2 years ago, I guess now.
All right.
The other big change is the other side of it is the foundation. That's this guy right here. Previous versions of the Kone had a pointed tip. It was both a little pointy and sharp, so you could jab your hand with it, cause problems, and it tended to split apart at the end over a long period of time, so it would leak some, which is obviously bad when you don't want a lot of grounds to come through and dirty up your cup. This welded-on disc on the bottom of the Kone serves to make it a little bit more stable, a little more rigid, and it prevents the leakage coming out of the tip.
Does that affect the flow of the water through the coffee?
So the idea of a conical filter isn't that the water is supposed to all go through and come out the tip. That is what happens a lot of time in practice. What you ideally want is equal amounts of water to flow from the sides at any given time.
To actually get the maximum spread
Exactly.
through the coffee.
So that's the other thing that this plastic rim does, is it sits right on top of a 4, 6, or 8 Chemex, so the metal doesn't actually touch the sides. On previous versions, the metal would rest maybe at one point or at multiples throughout the conical design, but this, it basically floats, so water can flow freely out of those holes at any given time. It makes a much cleaner cup of coffee, and it flows better. There's less chance of choking your filter.
And another benefit of the Kone is that it's made in the USA.
Yeah, both designed and manufactured in the U.S., as is the Able Brewing system, which is coming later this year. There were some delays with the pottery. Keith's been working on that for a while.
And that's so you don't actually need to use a Chemex.
And that's, yeah, it's a custom designed brewing system that the filter just sits in. There's a top piece that has the Kone, a bottom piece that you serve coffee out of. It has a nice little lid. It's very pretty. We'll test it when we get ours.
So before we actually go to making coffee, let's identify what we have here on the table.
Yeah, so in order to use the Kone, what you really need is a source of hot water. So we're using just a tea kettle, basically, electric tea kettle. A way to grind the coffee. This is a Baratza Preciso. It has the Sato attachment, which lets you do weight-based dosing. It's not necessary for this purpose. You just want a decent mid-range burr grinder.
That's consistent.
So you want a consistent size, the ability to control the size of the grounds, and a minimum distribution. So you only want a couple of different sizes of grounds.
Yes.
I mean, the same as with any filter brewed coffee.
We need coffee, of course.
Coffee. If you don't want to pony up for a big expensive electric burr grinder, this is just a Hario manual burr grinder. It's like $50. It'll do the same thing. It takes a long time to grind coffee in this compared to this. This is about 20 seconds. This is going to be 2 minutes, and it's actually kind of hard work. You have to really crank.
But much cheaper.
Much cheaper. Now, you can, if you have a steady hand and you're good with just a metal kettle, you can pour gently into here and get okay coffee. I tested it both ways, both with the traditional kettle and with the kind of fine-necked, narrow pour-over kettle.
Japanese-style pour-over.
Exactly. This is much easier to get good results out of. You have to, you can make the slightest mistake and dump a ton of water in, and bad things happen to your coffee. So I recommend the pour-over kettle. This is the one that Keith sells on the Able site. I actually prefer the Hario Bueno. It's about the same price.
Yep.
This is stainless steel. It tends to tarnish a little bit. The other one is aluminum, and it holds up a lot better over time.
Decent capacity.
So this is about a half a liter capacity. The Bueno is a little bit bigger, but it's roughly equivalent. And we're going to use 400 grams of water here. So we're using a 6-cup Chemex right now. It comes in a bunch of different sizes and capacities, 4, 6, and 8 cup. I think the 6-cup is a nice balance between size and capacity. There's 2 different handle styles. This is the leather and wood. I actually like the glass handle that sticks out of the side better than this one. So I would recommend that if you're buying new. And then a scale. This is a 2 kilogram, 0.1 gram accuracy scale. You want a 0.1 of a gram accuracy. You can tare it. It goes both negative and positive, so when we're subtracting stuff from it, you can count down the amount of coffee you're dumping. When you're pouring water, you need to go up to at least a kilogram or two.
Relatively cheap.
Yeah, 25 bucks. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do, grind our coffee. We're using the Asado. It'll hit us 27.2 grams of coffee. For 400 grams of finished coffee, of water to go into the pot, I tend to do 26 to 27 grams of coffee, depending on what type of coffee I'm brewing. Yep. Hitting the button. So 27.2 grams.
All right, and how fine did you grind that coffee?
I will show you. So on this particular grinder, I did a pretty medium fine. With previous versions of the Kone, I found that you could grind almost espresso fine, and it would sedimentary filtering would take effect, and you know it would work out. Okay. And you can see like it doesn't go down into my fingerprints. Basically, if it goes in your fingerprints, it's too small. If the pieces look big and chunky, that's way too big. This is a medium fine. Okay, grounds are in. I'm going to tap it a little bit. You want to kind of flatten them out in there so that it's not a big heap or a well. We're going to get our water up to boiling. And then what I find is about 200 degrees Celsius is where you want it. If you're pouring into a cold pour-over kettle, going from boiling to 200 degrees requires about 30 seconds plus the amount of heat you'll lose to warming up the kettle. So, you know, watch your timer after you, that's basically it.
Yeah. Let it boil, wait 30 seconds, get it into the carafe.
Pour into the carafe and then wait 30 seconds, yeah.
Got it.
Okay, beep.
All right, now you have 30 seconds to pour.
Pouring. You don't have to fill this up. You're not going to use all of this water. Although I do use a little bit to clean. That tends to be really useful. I just fogged up my glasses.
All right.
Okay, so you're the timekeeper, Norm.
So we have about 10 seconds left until 30 seconds.
In that interim, I'm going to level out the grounds just by taking the filter out and kind of tapping the side until it looks level.
No clumps.
No clumps. I'm tearing my scale so that it is set at 0. So I'm going to use that to measure the amount of water that goes into the coffee.
Okay, so this is not pouring all the water in. What you're doing right now?
We're going to pour about 50 grams into pre-wet. Norm, do you know what pre-wetting does?
It exposes all the grounds to hot water to get the chemical reaction started.
Yeah. So actually, what happens is coffee is a cellulose structure. There's oil and protein and all sorts of good flavor stuff encased in these little cells. And when the hot water hits it, they expand and release a lot of that stuff. So you'll see kind of foaming and fizzing depending on which kind of coffee you're using on the top of this, and the grounds are going to poof up. We're going to let the pre-wet sit for 45 seconds or a minute. So we should be about 130 on the timer over there.
Yep.
And then I'll add the rest of the water to reach 400 grams total water.
350 more grams.
350 more grams.
Okay, that's
Time
about
to pour?
a minute.
Okay.
Time to pour.
So with the old Kone, you wanted to pour just straight down the middle as slow as you can. The new Kone's whole pattern and whole size is much more forgiving. So you can do kind of some gentle swirls.
It's more fun.
A little bit of a back and forth occasionally. You want to break up the puck of coffee on the surface. And then you want to pour pretty much as slowly as you can.
Yeah, because you don't want that coffee to rise.
You want to keep the coffee, the water level relatively far down in the filter when you're just doing a single cup. If you're doing a bigger pot of coffee for more people, of course you can. And the ratios will change accordingly. I mean, basically, once you get above about 400 grams of coffee, that's the ratio, 400 to 25, 27, somewhere in there. If you're making smaller batches, you want to do less.
What should you be seeing on the Chemex? Should the coffee be going straight down along the sides?
Well, so what'll happen is the coffee will come out the sides of the filter and then run down the outside edge of that Chemex. So it'll look like it's building as it goes down and pours down the tip. You don't want to have all the coffee coming from one part of the filter or another. You want it to be kind of distributed evenly throughout. And if you are getting from one side or another, it means you're either pouring too close to that side, or maybe you have some clogged holes or something like that that you need to work on when there's no coffee in the bed.
All right.
Ideally, you want that to last about 4 minutes. I went a little bit fast, but you can pour, with a good pour-over kettle, you should be able to pour incredibly slowly.
There you go, 400 grams.
405.7. Okay, so our coffee has all the way drained out. You can tell sometimes there's a little slurry in the bottom where it's kind of like almost looks like quicksand, right? But now it's completely solid. You see that I have a conical shape in the hole, so that means it filtered pretty nicely. You don't want flat beds. You don't want grounds all the way up the side. Basically, you want to add water as slowly as you can because you want the grounds to come up as little as you can. You want a thicker filter for the coffee as it pours out. To clean this, it's really straightforward. All you do is take it over to the trash can, bang it against the edge, and then splash a little water in there. I'll show you. So it's hyper important that you clean it when it's still warm. If you let the coffee dry out in there and cool down, what happens is the little tiny holes get clogged and it becomes a real pain in the ass to clean. I think it is a top shelf dishwasher safe though, so you can do that. I don't ever put mine in the dishwasher. I'm afraid the plastic will warp. I find that it's literally 10 seconds to rinse if you take your still boiling water and just kind of splash it out as you're cleaning.
Put some extra water.
Exactly. So now it's time to taste. Let's give it a swirl here. You can see nice, rich, dark coffee. It looks a little cloudy, but that's mainly because of our lights in here.
What type of coffee we're drinking today?
We're drinking Ritual of Folly, I believe, which has hints of blackberry. There you go, Mr. Chan. So the other benefit of the cone is that unlike traditional paper filtered pour overs, you don't filter out any of the oils that are built into coffee by default. So you end up with a much more rich, fuller kind of mouthfeel, the coating that you get on your tongue when you drink the coffee. Some people really don't like that, but if you like French presses and don't like drip coffee, that's probably indicative that you like a kind of more oily coffee. And by using the metal filter, you leave all that stuff in, which is a big advantage of the cone, in my book at least. Slurp, Norm. Yeah, so that's how you make a cup of coffee with the cone. I think it's a fantastic way to brew coffee if you really like a French press. It gives you all the benefits of the pour over, with the control over the amount of water that goes in, the temperature at which it hits, the linger time in the bed, and you still get to keep the delicious mouthfeel of the direct brewed coffee.
And it works great with the Chemex. It works okay with the Hario?
The Hario V60 is okay. I find that you need a bigger one. So I have the 4-cup version of the Hario V60. I think you need the huge one if you're going to use this more effectively because it just doesn't sit.
Yes. And the Able Brewing system, which isn't out now.
It's not out yet, so we don't know.
We assume it'll work well with that as well.
My theory is that Keith will make sure that that's the premier way to use the Able Brewing Comb. It's $60. It's expensive when you look at it compared to paper filters, but it's basically 1 year's worth of paper filters by my calculation. So that's the Able Brewing Comb. It's out now. You can buy it at ablebrewing.com. I like it a lot.
Cheers. Hot coffee.
Hot coffee. For Tested, I'm Will.
I'm Norm.
See you guys later.
Bye.